Financial gurus can actually hurt your finances, especially if you're a small business owner. Now, you may be wondering why that is, so let me explain why. First, let me qualify this by saying that social media has made getting financial education way easier and more accessible. I myself use social media to put more finance content out there. You don't have to sit in a stuffy office with some guy in a suit or jump onto a boring Zoom call in order to learn a little bit about money. You can scroll your feed or do a quick search and immediately get answers to your questions pushed to you. But here's the catch when it comes to financial gurus on social media. Most of them are entertainers first and educators second. Their number one goal isn't exactly to make you wealthy. It's usually for them to get wealthy off of clicks, views, and engagement. And my audience is mostly small business owners, so many people already know this, but in business, you always have to ask the question of motivation. Anytime someone does anything, whether it's in business or politics, you have to go back to the basic question, what's driving them to do that? In the case of financial gurus, it's pretty simple. They don't make money for giving the best advice. They make money from getting the most viewership, which means that the content is designed to go viral, not necessarily to help you. Let's take Dave Ramsey as an example. I'm not singling him out or saying that he's particularly bad, but he's one of the most well-known, so it's a perfect example to look at. Dave and his other personalities there at Ramsey Solutions don't make any money from actually helping people individually. What exactly do they make money from? Sponsorships, referral networks, book sales, and other media events. That doesn't mean that they're inherently evil, but notice something about that. They could be hyper successful in every single one of those areas and not actually help a single person. In fact, whether or not you're successful with your money doesn't matter to them at all at the end of the day as far as their business is concerned. All that matters is that you keep viewing their content and keep clicking. Now, because of that model, the advice that they give has to be super digestible and repeatable. In today's age, it's got to be a lot of sound bites you can clip for TikTok and Instagram. But here's the problem. Most people have complex issues, which means you can't have a cookie cutter size solution. So yeah, most of the advice that you get might be fine, especially if you're young, you're single, you have a W-2 job. But the more complications that you add, the more variables come into play, which means that cookie cutter advice actually starts to become irrelevant. Not only does it become irrelevant, it can actually work backwards and start to hurt you. Let me explain this another way. Here's an image of someone who's young, single, and works a steady job with regular income. These are all of the things that can go wrong or different variables that you might have person to person based on just those characteristics. Now, let's say that that person gets married and has a child. Well, now you have a bunch of new variables that might change the way that advice needs to be interacted with. Things like college savings and insurance. Different people are going to want to approach that differently based on their families and their specific situations. And the more complex that those situations become, the more irrelevant that cookie cutter advice becomes. Financial baby steps, financial order of operations. These things are fantastic for getting traffic and making digestible and repeatable steps for people. But they're not that helpful when it comes to individual people, especially when they have more and more complex situations. Another thing that you'll see is something that I call financial stolen valor. Gurus love to say that they have a background in finance, and that sounds pretty impressive, right? But 9 out of 10 times what they mean by that is that they took a class in college, they started an MBA, maybe they worked a job at a bank or a wirehouse for less than a year. But what that means is that they can cite that experience as justification for whatever thing they're trying to tell you. But it's actually very easy to fact check this. If you go to FINRA's broker check, or you could go to the SEC advisor information site, you can actually find the background of any social media personality or advisor. I'll use myself as an example. If you go and you type my name into the SEC website, not only does my name come up with any experience I might have, but also the firm that I work at, how it started, and you'll see that not only am I a control person, I am the owner of the firm that I work at. This information is really helpful to use when you want to actually fact check the background of these finance gurus that are giving you constant advice. Now, here's the part that might surprise you. The financial guru that says, don't pay a financial advisor, or don't pay a financial advisor these different ways, actually cares less about your financial well-being than a financial advisor who overcharges you a bunch of money. Why? Because the financial guru's incentive stops at you following, liking, or dropping a comment and continuing to view their videos. If you go on to make $1 million or lose $1 million, they could not care less as long as you continue to consume their content. Now, that might not be true from a human perspective. Maybe they care about other humans, but at least from a business perspective, that's true. The wheel wheels of their business don't stop turning if you go and you lose $1 million or you go bankrupt. They only stop turning if you stop watching their videos. But meanwhile, most advisors, and even the ones that would overcharge you or charge you in a fee model that might be less than optimal, still do care about your financial success. Because not only your ability to pay them, but even the amount that you pay them might change based on how financially successful you are. For people who charge a percentage of assets under management, which gets a lot of hate these days, their incentive is for your net worth to grow and for you to have more and more money invested. Now, there is a conflict there because maybe there's other things you could be doing with money other than investing it, but they are still invested in your financial well-being at the end of the day. Take my own business, for example. I charge based off of 3 different subscription levels. But if someone starts at the bottom, it is in my interest that they make more money and move up to the top tiers of that subscription program. At least from a business perspective, I'm invested in my clients making more money because it means that they can pay me more money. They have bigger problems to solve. And at the end of the day, that's more money that I can use to feed my family. So ironically, that financial advisor that charges you a fee that you don't love actually cares more about your financial well-being than the financial guru that told you not to pay them at all. And here's the oxymoron of money rules. Dogmatic rules about money are almost never universal, but they don't make very good content either. So for example, whenever I talk about anything on this channel, I talk a lot in qualifications. This might work, this could work for you, here are the reasons it might not work, and all those things. That is not sexy when you're just yelling into a camera. When you're doing that, it's more entertaining for me to tell you why everyone else is wrong and why I'm right, and if because they're breaking my rules, they're not going to have any money at the end of their life. Perfect example of this, to use Dave Ramsey as an example, is how many videos there are of him arguing with whole life insurance salesmen. Now, ironically, in those conversations, pretty much nobody is correct. Dave gets his facts wrong about whole life pretty regularly, and the whole life insurance salesman is almost always omitting information or just saying information that's not true. But none of that matters. What matters is that that content is entertaining and people continue to go back and watch it. Remember, the incentive is for engagement, not necessarily accuracy. That advice out there on the internet is made for clicks and comments, not you personally. So here's my takeaway. If you're a small business owner or anybody whose financial life is just a little bit complex, don't take financial gurus' content as gospel, but treat it as content. If you actually do want to succeed financially, whatever strategy you adopt is going to depend on you. And you could do that yourself, or you could go and hire somebody else to help you with it. But at the end of the day, that education that you receive or that the person that you hire receives has to be applied specifically to your situation, to your goals, and ultimately what you're trying to get out of life. Don't let content that's designed for clicks and likes ruin your financial future. And speaking of ruining your financial future, here's a video about the money mistakes that small business owners often make.